On the 3rd of September in Beijing, China held probably its largest military parade since 2009. It is the first time that China has held a military parade to celebrate or commemorate its victory over Japan in the Second World War. So this is a big deal for China. It's something that it hasn't done before. We're not really sure why China's chosen to do it now, but it certainly is following a precedent set by Russia. Russia in May had its large Victory Day parades, and it certainly follows a kind of post-Soviet or totalitarian regime blueprint where you get as much hard military hardware and drive it through the centre of your capital city. The parade is very much directed at a domestic audience first and foremost. It really plays into President Xi Jinping's narrative of the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation. It's kind of a nationalist theme that he's been playing on since he came to power. It's very much built around the idea that China has kind of got over its century of humiliation at the hands of the Western powers and at Japan, and is now kind of ready to reclaim its place at the top table of the international stage. So very much from a domestic viewpoint, it plays very heavily into kind of existing Chinese Communist Party narratives. It's also a great chance for Xi Jinping to show off, how successful China has been in developing an indigenous defense industry and indigenous armed forces that are able to protect China from, all these various emerging threats and existing threats. Which moves us on to the next kind of audience for this, which of course is China's regional rivals, which include the United States first and foremost, but also countries like Japan, which China has very much been involved in a propaganda campaign against for the last 10 to 15 years, really framing Japan as kind of as the other, the thing that China and the Communist Party is really against. So from China's perspective, this is a great opportunity to show how far China has come, but also to show how powerful it is, and as a warning to anyone who might kind of threaten what it would say its core interests are. Finally, we look at the rest of the world, how China would, in many ways, this could be a sales room for Chinese equipment. China is trying to become a major exporter of defense equipment, and certainly this will show the best of Chinese technology. How the rest of the world perceives that depends on really where you are. If you look at who has agreed to come along and who has declined to come to Beijing, then the Western powers, Europe, the United States, Japan have turned down invitations to come along, but they're not really the core audience in terms of potential customers anyway, whereas the countries that are coming along are kind of close allies, places like Russia and other interested parties who tend to see the world maybe from more China's perspective rather than the US perspective. In previous military parades in totalitarian regimes, whether it's North Korea or Soviet Union or China before it opened up, parades like this were a real kind of opening for us to look at what was coming out of various kind of top secret programs. And that's certainly true when we look at North Korea and its weapons of mass destruction, for example. Now, China, because it's semi-open now, and there's so much information that you can garner from the Chinese internet, a lot of the systems that we're seeing and which China is showing to the world for the first time officially have actually been leaked out on the Chinese internet for probably the last 5-10 years. So for people who spend a lot of time looking at China, these systems aren't very surprising. Of course, there'll be details that we can pick up, and that's great, and certainly that's very helpful. Certainly we'll be able to know what systems maybe have not finished their development cycle yet and haven't actually entered service yet. Certainly when we look at some of the intercontinental ballistic missiles or the medium-range ballistic missiles, this will be something to take into account. That said, there is a lot of information out there that is openly accessible nowadays that wasn't 5-10 years ago. So there's a kind of a certain amount that we already know about most of these systems. Of course, the interesting thing is that China has chosen very carefully the systems it wants to show, so it's showing what it thinks is important. So this is very much about strategic signaling as much as it is about learning what China is actually building.